I just told my husband of 3 years I'm pregnant. Well, he wasn't very excited. Let me tell you why. He doesn't want kids. And I did not tell him that I stopped taking my medication. Oopsie. Now I'm pregnant, and guess what? He said he's going to leave me? How can a man just leave his child? This is what I'm going to do to him. My husband James and I have been married for 3 years, and we were at a stage in our marriage where I feel like things are beginning to change and we no longer see eye to eye. For the longest of times, James has been the love of my life. He was not just my best friend in school, he was the only man I had an eye for. The only one who succeeded in breaking down all my walls and causing me to open up my heart to love. We hit it off well as friends, and we supported each other's endeavors well. James was an aspiring businessman when we met. He was a student and was also putting things in place for his textile company. I loved his diligence and his approach to life, and we instantly became friends. I had a flair for writing, and James encouraged me so much that I actually completed my first book. He was the most supportive friend, and so I was with him. So when our relationship migrated from just being friends to dating, I wasn't surprised at all. My whole family already loved him. My parents, my siblings, and extended family members all knew and loved him. So I absolutely felt at peace when I said a resounding yes to his desires to make me his wife forever. Nothing felt odd, nothing felt missing. I was happy and content. Until now. I was and still am the biggest fan of James. When he told me about his dreams of having one of the biggest textile companies one day, I supported him. We would stay up all night talking about different quality materials and all kinds of things related to business. We would debate colors for different products and source for raw material suppliers together. So James pretty much knew that I was supporting his career and was willing to help him make something good out of it, just as he was more than willing to encourage me in writing careers. So, when I turned 27, we got married and started to live our lives as two happy couples. It was one of the most beautiful weddings ever. I wore my dream dress and I had my dream man. Before we engaged, James had mentioned to me that he thought after we got married we should take some time, first to plan and get things sorted and organized before we began to think about having children and raising a family. So I agreed to the idea because I think that it was just perfectly reasonable. I've always been somebody who finds great pleasure in planning properly. I figured that our children would have better lives if we took some time to plan well before bringing them into this world. We would be able to save up enough money to give them a very comfortable life. So, as we planned our wedding, we agreed that we would take our family planning very seriously. The week before our wedding and eventual honeymoon, James and I went to the doctor. He recommended for us, and I began staying on the pills from that day. Yes, our honeymoon was steamy, as you would expect, but we're not expecting a baby. We simply enjoyed ourselves, and James seemed never to get tired at any point. He was always ready and eager to touch, so everything was great. We continued this for the first year of our marriage, and we made plans to save. In all honesty, I made plans to save, and I kept talking about how I wanted our kids to be, and the kind of life I wanted for them to have, and James seemed rather unbothered. I just dismissed it as something that was common with men. Women are obviously more excited about children than men, so I let things be. We continued our family planning in our second year of marriage and into the third year, and that was when I started to get really concerned. I turned 30 years old the week of our third anniversary, and that for me meant that I was slowly getting towards menopause. I'd waited for 3 years, and I went along with his plans. But turning 30 started to make, think about raising a family and doing so fast. So the first week of our third anniversary, I waited for James to get back from work, and we had a conversation about raising. I was sitting in the living room when he entered, and I told him I wanted to discuss something important with him. He sat on the couch opposite of him, and I told him that we need to start considering having kids and raising a family. I was nearing menopause, and it's time. James laughed out loud, and I looked at him confused. When he caught his breath, he told me that that was not possible. We still had more things to do, and he was not ready to be a father yet. Well, he stood up, touched my right cheek, and went into the bedroom, still laughing. The man thought that I was joking. I allowed things to be, and we simply continued our relationship. But I was not happy. 2 days later, I brought it up to him again. The time was slipping away and we needed to start raising our family. This time, his reaction shocked me to the bone marrow. He looked me right into the eyes and warned me to never mention it to him again until he brought it up himself, and then he left me standing there in shock. I was being dazed. Had something happened to the gentle, loving man I fell in love with? At that moment, I was very upset. I dressed up, took my car keys, and went off to the hospital. And I went to go see my gynecologist. I explained to her that I would like to be off the pill and start trying for a baby. She understood me perfectly. She gave me the needed recommendations, and that was how I got off the pill. When I got back home, I apologized to James for taking it too seriously and told him that I only wanted what was best for us. I allowed him to kiss me and carry me into the bedroom, and I knew what I planned to do. I was going to make sure we had intimate moments as many times as possible until I became pregnant. And so, that day was the beginning of it. James seemed obsessed with my body, but very strangely. There were times I felt that it was less about me. It appeared he had some passion for something or someone, and I was, just an outlet for him to pour it out. I shrugged off the feeling and did not ask questions from James. I simply allowed him to have intimate moments with me as many times as he would like while I just, prayed to be pregnant. I've decided on this because I believe that he was only scared of being a father, and once he could finally just feel his baby kicking inside of my belly, I think that would, change him completely and make him realize that all I was doing was for the good of the family, so we can have one big happy family. Well, a few days later, I was feeling absolutely sick, and I observed I'd missed my period. I took one of those self-pregnancy tests and found out I was pregnant. James was away at work, and I could not believe my eyes when I saw the 2 bold lines on the stick. I quickly rushed to the hospital to see my gynecologist, and she confirmed that yes, indeed, I'm pregnant. She prescribed some drugs and a diet, which I got, and went back home full of absolute joy. The only sadness that I had was that I did not know how James would react to the news of my pregnancy. Guys, I let that fear get to me so much so that, I could not bring myself to immediately tell James that I was pregnant with our child. So I let the weeks pass. I secretly visited my gynecologist and had all my medication well hidden so that he would simply not find out. I once brought up the idea of how it would feel to have a baby on one of the days I returned from my gynecologist appointment, but he said nothing and just walked out of the room. That further made me decide not to tell him. But now I'm getting tired, and I'm in a dilemma. I'm already 3 months gone and have not told James yet that we're expecting a baby. I'm well aware that soon enough I'll not be able to hide the pregnancy any longer from him. He would find out one way or the other. Do I just call him to sit down for a conversation, or do I make it a grand gesture so that he's pleased with my announcement? I clearly don't know what to do anymore. Updates. Number 1. So, I decided to let go of the fear like some of you advised and just talk to James about the pregnancy. When he arrived from work, I'd made his favorite room and I pulled him into the bedroom for a conversation. He seemed to be in a pretty good mood, and that was my opportunity. So I decided to go the route of asking him about trying for children and raising a family. I held his hand and told him gently that I believed it's time for us to allow some growth in the family. He just needed to know that time was no longer on my side, especially time for fertility. I looked him in the eyes and begged him that he should let us try. James slowly retrieved his hands from mine, looked at me and told me that he was not ready for any children and he wanted nothing to do with any kid. Well, I was pretty dumbfounded and I could not say anything. The tears began to fall from my eyes and I could no longer control myself. I started crying profusely, telling him that I was getting old and my cycles would be less frequent. I thought the sight of tears would make him pull me closer and change his mind, but it did nothing. James simply sat there, and he sat and told me that he was in no way ready to father a child. At this point, I was angry. I was very much upset that the person who should be my partner and support me was only thinking about himself. So, in anger, I screamed at him and said, "Well, I'm pregnant, and there's nothing you can do about it." Yep. I saw the look on his face change from being shocked to being enraged.
"You're what?"
he asked me when he stood up. I watched his expression turn from shock to straight-up rage. I ignored him because I knew that he heard me clearly, so I just turned my eyes away from him and put my hands on my head. My head ached badly, and I could not imagine that my life had gotten to this point where the man I'd always loved did not want to raise a family with me. "What did you say?" he asked me again. I ignored him. I was seething with anger. "I'm very disappointed in you. You're irresponsible, you're worthless, and you're stupid," James said. I could simply no longer control the tears as they came flooding down my cheeks. I watched as, James verbally abused me and said all kinds of things to me. I continued crying, unable to respond to all the accusations and abuse. I'd merely thought that the news of a child would erase whatever fear or doubts that he had, and he would appreciate me making the best decision for our family. But here I was, in absolute misery, just because I decided to have a child, feeling a lot of emotional and psychological pain. James walked out on me and left me crying. Now, as I write this, I'm asking myself, what could I have done to be treated this way? I'm here thinking about what next to do in my life, and what could be the next in this already chaotic story of my life. Update number 2. So, the events of the last few days have been not just shocking, but painful for me. I know that some of you have said that I made the wrong decision by not informing him before I went and decided to get pregnant with our child. But you truly cannot know what it is that I'm going through, unless you've experienced it yourself. No, this is not some movie you're reading about, this is in fact my life. All I've ever wanted is to raise my own family and be happy with the love of my life. A child would be an absolute blessing. That is what I've always known. That is what I've always been told by my parents, and I wanted James and I to experience what that felt like before it became too late. Any reasonable woman would know that paying attention to one's reproductive cycle is important in doing things like raising a family. After my announcement to James of my pregnancy, things have changed absolutely drastically. He would no longer speak to me, and all that I got from him was the silent treatment. Aside from the fact that he would not speak to me, James also stopped giving me money for necessities. The responsibility of paying the bills fell on me, and James would go out, come back late at night, and I would question him on some of those nights, but as usual, he would not respond. On some of those nights even, he reeked of absolute alcohol, and every time I asked for anything, his response was for me to sort it out myself. Since I'm the one who decided I was ready for a kid. I was constantly fatigued, and I could not get most of the house chores done because of the pregnancy. I was constantly tired, constantly unable to get a lot of things done, and I did not get any help from James at all. One of such days I felt terribly ill, and I could feel my blood pressure would be rising, so I just decided to pay a quick trip to my gynecologist, and she attended to me, prescribed some medication, and that made me feel a bit better. I went back home, and I felt so much better, only to get home to meet the surprise of my life. Guess what, guys? I arrived at the house and found out that James had gone missing. His bags and belongings were missing, and it straight up looked like all that was left were my belongings. I stood there dazed for a moment while I steadied myself with a chair. Where on earth could James be? I did not think that having a child could drive him to disappear. I could not believe that the man I chose to do this life with would abandon me at such a crucial moment in life. Of our lives. As I thought about these things, I became scared. What if something bad happened to James? I know he said he's upset, but he didn't just leave me the moment I told him or even days later. He was still present and would still come home at night. Well, except for one night. I'd waited up for him, but he did not come home. I went to bed and heard the doorbell in the morning. It was James, looking all calm with stains of lipstick on his shirt. Well, I wanted to confront him, but I was feeling too sick for an argument, and so I thought against it and let things be. Except that time he came in. So I do have reasons to be scared, and I have reasons to believe that something may have gone wrong. I'm devastated, and I cannot wait to get to the root of this. Update number 3. Hey guys, This is probably the most alarming update that you will read from me, and I tell you it's shocking for me as well. Yes, I grew silent on here after James disappeared because I could just not accept that my life was turning into something that I've never dreamt of. After James's disappearance, I did try to take some steps. So that same week, I filed a report at the police station and told them all that I knew. The police carried out their investigation, and yes, it did appear James had left on his free will and was in no danger when he left. Because the footage from the CCTV showed that nothing strange or untoward happened the day that he left. He simply packed his bags and off he went to God knows where. All attempts to reach him proved not to work. He must have changed his number, and the moment he left, and the police could simply not do anything about it. And it's all just because it was not a criminal case. And guys, I straight up hate to say this, but I moved on. Or so I thought I did. I carried my baby, gave birth to her, and started taking care of herself. I tried to be strong, to let go of all the anger and hurt I felt at what James did to me and what my life had turned to overnight. But most times I failed. I would wake up in the night, head to the balcony, and pace around with pain in my heart. I told myself that I moved on and all I needed to do was be the mother to my little girl, Anna. But thoughts plagued me. I had my friend Rose to talk to about the most of my challenges. But Rose was also a married woman who just had her first kid and was trying her best to get things right. I could only go to her with my complaints as much, but there was not much that she could even do. What I needed was a true closure from what James had made me go through. Not only me, but even my daughter Anna, who did not have anyone to look up to as a father figure. I wished that I would see James and he would cower at our feet and beg for our forgiveness. So these were the kind of thoughts that plagued me. A few days ago, I was pacing, and in deep thoughts I usually was. I got the surprise of a lifetime, guys. I was pacing along the balcony and I got a message delivered to my phone. I checked my phone and guess what I saw? A picture of James with a woman. Yes. You read that right. I saw a picture of James with a woman. He was smiling ear to ear. He looked happy and they were in a relaxed state. Do you know the next shock I faced? Well, the woman in the pictures happened to be my maternal aunt. Yes, it's absolutely insane. My story sounds crazy and my life feels crazy at this point, but 1 year after the disappearance of James, I thought I had moved on. Closed the chapter of my life once and for all. At first, I had thought my mind was playing games with me. When I saw the first picture, that could not possibly be my maternal aunt, Robbie. But alas, it was. I scrolled from the next picture onto the next and to the next and the next, and there she was in all the pictures, smiling and happy. I could not believe it. Even as I write this, I still don't believe it. It was impossible for Aunt Robbie and James to be together, right? There was no possibility of that, and Aunt Robbie was my mom's younger sister, and one of my favorite aunts. She loves me dearly and encouraged me as a girl growing up. She had been happy for me when I brought James home to introduce him to my family. So pardon me if I say that I could not possibly believe it was her in the pictures with whom James had supposedly been missing for a year. I tried calling the number that sent the pictures, but I got no response. I had to force myself to go to bed, and all I could think of is saying that I cannot wait to find out exactly who sent those pictures. Update number 4. So guys, this is an update on the recent new development. As I said, I tried to reach the number that sent me those pictures the other night and I could not. Early the next day, I tried calling again and nobody answered. It was then that I decided to send a text. I asked to know who it was, and I actually got a response that said I cannot reveal my identity. That, of course, was expected. Whoever it was had to be somebody who either knew James or me or Aunt Robbie, and they did not want to get into any trouble. Well, I've been in trouble for the best part of my life, and my life had a fair share of its sorrows. I was not going to stop now that I knew I was maybe an inch closer to getting my revenge and doing the right thing for my daughter. She at least deserved to be well taken care of, and so I decided to send another text and wait for a response. This time I threatened to call the police, hand over the contact details to them, and they would find the sender and apprehend him. Well, you know what? That did its magic. He responded, and guess who it was? It turned out to be Ryan, Aunt Robbie's husband. He'd gotten my number and decided to send me the pictures. Well, what I heard was pretty much unbelievable, and I had hoped that for some reason I would be wrong and it was Aunt Robbie's look-alike in those pictures and not her. But hearing Ryan tell me that he was the one who sent the pictures made me realize I was neither imagining things nor dreaming. It was truly Aunt Robbie. I need to find out more. How and when did the relationship between James and Robbie start? How could Aunt Robbie do that to me? She knew how much I gushed over James and loved him when we met. Well, she knew me too well to be the one who betrays me. This revelation hurt me, and for a few minutes I did not know how to act. I checked on my daughter, who's taking a peaceful nap, and thought of what to do. So I called a nanny to come and watch her for a few hours, and I set up a quick coffee meet-up with Ryan. Even though we lived not very far away from each other, everybody learned to mind their business in this nuclear family, unless there was something that had to bring us together. So that would explain why I was not aware of my major changes in their marriage. So we met at the chosen spot, and I began to ask Ryan all the questions that were set to drive me mad and make me insane. Why was James with Aunt Robbie? Why wasn't Robbie at home with Ryan? What on earth is happening? Well, James went missing, and I even thought something bad happened to him, and I moved on only to find out 1 year later that he was now with my aunt. And what, a relationship? My favorite aunt, and they both looked happy like they had done no wrong at all. None of it made sense, and I desperately wanted answers. So I sat there and let Ryan do the explaining to me, and I got the explanation that I asked for. Ryan explained to me that a year ago, when James went missing, Robbie asked him for a divorce. A request that shocked him because Robbie did not give him any reasonable reason as to why she wanted the divorce. Ryan questioned her, and all she said was that she was tired of the relationship and simply wanted out. That did not make sense to Ryan, and he told her that. Although they'd been in a loveless marriage, it still is not making sense to him. Before then, 3 years ago, Robbie had asked Ryan if they could explore the option of an open marriage and stay away from each other for a bit. She was in the opinion that the distance would cause them to love each other more. Ryan explained that he did not buy that, but Robbie persisted, and what she wanted, and if she didn't get it, she wants a divorce. She left Ryan without a goodbye, and ever since the divorce, Ryan's been on Robbie's tail and has been obsessed with finding out her whereabouts, just to know if she was going to get married to somebody else, and she was supposedly leaving the city after the divorce. After a year of searching for Robbie and doing various investigations, Ryan found her in another state, and he was shocked to find out that she was involved with James. It was with his same shock and anger that he decided to send the pictures to me. He had heard from my mom that things were no longer great between me and James, and had heard about James's disappearance. He knew that I would be as angry and hurt as he was, or probably more, and thought I needed to see the pictures too. And that was how he got my number and sent them to me. Well, guys, to say that I was shocked at the turn of events would be putting it mildly. I mean, who would know that Aunt Robbie was capable of such? Running off and divorcing Ryan so that she could be with my man? Ryan told me that he would like for us to work as a team, just to make sure that Robbie and James paid for their deeds. I told him I would get back to him on that, and we both just left. Truth be told, as much as I am upset with James and Robbie, I cannot help but think about it if they're worth my time. I have my daughter to attend to, yet I really do want revenge. So I'm writing this to you guys, battling the thoughts in my mind of what exactly it is I should do. Final update. So I decided to team up with Ryan to go find Robbie and James. I figured that even if I was not doing that for myself, I would have to do that for my daughter. My daughter deserved a lot of care and, of course, a lot of money to take care of her future. So I decided that I would not back down now, and I had to do all that I had to do. So Ryan and I met to set up our plan and all that we intended to do to get our revenge. We traveled to the revealed location and found them, Robbie and James. They were on a beach having a great time, both of them lying on the chairs enjoying the view. I'd actually seen them in similar pictures doing the same. James was startled when he eventually noticed us, and the two of them made to run away. But Ryan had anticipated them, and he stopped them instantly, threatening to call the police, and, well, if they did not wait to listen to what we had to say. Robbie began to cry and spoke first, as she told us that she had always been in love with James, that it was love at first sight that began the very first day I introduced James to the family. I guess James also felt the same way, and they started dating, secretly. Yes, my mouth was wide open as I looked from Robbie to James, expecting him to deny the accusations, but he said nothing. I could not believe my ears. Robbie narrated that James could not leave me because she was already married to Ryan, and so they resorted to the secret dating. While he went ahead to marry me, this was what made Robbie propose the idea of an open marriage to James, because she wanted fully just to date James. Of course, my dear husband did not want any kids with me because he had been planning to divorce me all along. And there I was, thinking he was just scared of being a father and having some pity for him. How terrible. It turns out that James made plans to leave me after I told him I was pregnant. That would explain the silent treatment I got those days. He simply did not want me to catch on to his plans and so resorted to not talking to me. Well, it was the same period that Robbie asked Ryan for a divorce and they eloped together. Guys, I thought I had heard the most shocking revelations and my life could not take any more dramatic turns. That is, until Robbie told me that she and James are now married and she wanted me to divorce James so that their marriage could be official. Of course, I laughed her to scorn. This would never happen. Robbie wanted to say something else and I lost my temper and my hands came cracking across her face. Who the heck did she think she was? Stealing my man and wrecking my home. I hit her again and again and again in anger, and James tried to stop me by pulling my hands away. Ryan stepped in as well and started to hit James. The men faced each other while I faced Robbie, a brawl, as you could call it. I was determined to leave indelible marks on her face with my nails. We were all engrossed in the fight until a man walked up to us and loudly announced,
"The police are on the way."
I'm not, having done so many things right in my life, but I knew that I was doing something right this time, fighting not just for myself but also for my daughter. I'll be pressing charges on James for bigamy, while Ryan has decided to reopen the issue of alimony. He had not been paid alimony to Robbie when in fact, he should not, because she was the one who cheated on him. And yes, my grand plan for James would be to drain his money through alimony and, of course, child support. Anna was his child, and there's no denying it. He would suffer, and he would pay for his deeds. He and Robbie could rot in hell. I hope they both learn their bitter lessons. Well, this was one of the wilder stories. I mean, I did read some comments that a lot of people were agreeing with. Let me run this by you guys, because not everyone's going to agree with this, but there were a lot of the commenters who were completely, and I mean straight up completely, against OP, and actually a lot of people were just wishing, hoping, and begging that this was one of those stories where we could see a different perspective, say, from the significant other of OP, because we want to see his side of the story, right? And the reason these commenters want to know that is because this guy made it crystal clear to OP, look, I don't want to have children right now. I don't want to talk about it. I want to focus on my career. And OP just kept pressing it and pressing it and pressing it, and then she went behind his back, stopped taking her medicine, and, well, got pregnant. And there were a lot of commenters who put her as the actual a-hole of the story. Regardless of what OP's significant other ended up doing, which was leaving, cheating with the aunt, I still want to know your thoughts and perspective about what you think about it. Do you think that OP is the one in the wrong, or do you just think, you know what? Her husband was misleading her for years, promising her a family, kids, just to ultimately disappoint her when she knew her biological clock was ticking? Guys, let's talk about this one down below in the comment section. It was a wild one. My name is Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every day, and I would love for you to join me tomorrow because we have one heck of a story lined up. Guys, I'll see you then. Have a great day, and of course remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.